And it's 2. Should we go live? Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready to join us.
Welcome, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Fangutelezi, and I work for 10 and 5. Today, we are having a very interesting webinar about activism and social change in the creative industry. We have a panel of 3 speakers as well as our moderator. Our speakers are Carin, Sarah, and Lerato, and our moderator will be for today is Carissa. Sorry about that. She will do the introduction. She will introduce everyone. On my side, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are live on Facebook as well. And if you have any questions, please do use the chat box, which will be on your right. Raise your hand, and then our moderator will obviously ask our speakers. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. And just to give you a background, so we are hosting Creative Women Month. It's something that we do every year. In the past, we've had conferences with Estee Lauder and other brands, and this year we just wanted to have masterclasses, webinars to discuss the issues that we as women face on a daily basis. And we also have an IG auction as well as an Instagram campaign. If you want to find out more about our Creative Women Month campaign, please go on our website, which is www.10and5.co.com actually. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Carissa now, who will be moderating the conversation. And I'm out.
Thank you so much, Tabang, and a huge shout out to Between 10 and 5. I'm such a fan of the platform, and it's such an honor to be here today with such incredible women as well. I think that, you know, after celebrating, I'm going to go quote unquote Women's Day on the 9th of August, some of us may feel a bit disheartened by the fact that we are uplifting women on this one day when every other day of the year we are killed and we are, you know, downtrodden and treated very much differently to our counterparts. So I think that conversations like this are so necessary, so that even in the midst of our reality that we face in South Africa specifically, there still is just a little bit of hope, a glimmer of hope in the background, or in the horizon rather. So I'm Carissa Cupido. I am a content creator. I'm also a radio and TV personality, originally from Cape Town, but currently living in Johannesburg. And it's so great that we live in a time that we can connect like this across cities. And I just want to welcome you to this chat with Between 10 and 5 on activism and social change in the creative industry. That title alone excites me so much. I can speak, I'm sure, on behalf of all the incredible women here today, whom I'll introduce in a second, that we try our best to use our platform to almost be a voice for the voiceless, and to advocate for change, and to advocate for the rights or the equity of our fellow sisters and fellow women in South Africa. And we really aim to foster change through the different kind of content we create, or the craft that we try to hone in on the daily. So welcome to the women that we have here today. We have Carin, Sarah, as well as Lerato, and we're gonna have such a good conversation. We have an actress, we have a content creator, and a CEO of a company, an activist, head of PR and innovation at an agency. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you introduce yourselves, just so that I don't do you any injustice. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with Carin Bester.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you, and thank you Between 10 and 5. It's nice to be part of a platform like this where, you know, we can actually talk about what it is we do. So I'm a performance artist, actress, activist who also works in the film, TV, and theatre industry as a set designer, art director, and a props master. But yeah, I think passion-wise, the focus is on activism through art, which is, I suppose, why I'm here.
Amazing, such good work. Let's move on to Lerato.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lerato Sengadi. I am a multi-award-winning PR and marketing specialist. I'm also influential. I don't like to use the term influencer because it has a weird connotation, but I am influential over and above just, you know, selling stuff for brands. And I'm also an activist who's very passionate about women, our rights, and, you know, taking and owning our space in society, and safely so.
Thank you so much, Lerato. Sarah Jane, you want to go for it?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me today. And I just wanted to say I'm so honored to be here amongst such a powerful group of women, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you all today. My name is Sarah Jayne Fell. I've been working in media and publishing since 2008. I was the editor of One Small Seed magazine. I worked for Design and Daba for about 6 years. And in 2014, I started my own agency, basically a content agency based in Cape Town. We focus on brands in the creative industries and lifestyle sectors. And then in the beginning of last year, I decided to start a non-pop-up art show as a passion project. And I think kind of that the segue from publishing into marketing, I started finding that I was missing working in the arts. So this was kind of my way of getting back into that space, and kind of creating a non as a way of breaking away from the traditional gallery concept. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go.
Definitely. I really love the intersection that we can occupy space in, of both, you know, the arts and entertainment, whatever sphere you might find yourself in. It's all pretty much a creative space. So I'm really curious about how all of you ended up where you are today. What was that pathway, that questioning, those conversations you may have had with yourself to get to where you are in 2020? Carin, we can start with you.
So I think where I am right now is completely different from where I started, in the sense of in entertainment industry, in the sense of that I studied method acting, and you know, there was that idea of you want to be on a stage, you want to tell stories in that form, and you grow as a person and you grow into society and learning what is going on and what is happening, and suddenly there's a need. And that was what happened for me. There was a need to portray something, to share a message that I couldn't necessarily do in a more traditional theater sense of a way. And that is how I found the world of performance art, which is a lot less limiting than your traditional theater or film sense, because performance art can be completely non-vocal. It can have no sound at all. It can be in a street, in a gallery, it can be in a theater space, it can happen in a lift, it can be absolutely anywhere. And also what I really liked about it is the intervention side of it. People might not be planning on seeing you. They don't go to a theater specifically to buy their ticket to see this. You're just there and you're in their face and you go, I've got a message, and you might not you might not have been wanting to see this message today, but I'm showing you this message because you need to. And that's, you know, that's how I like why I started loving performance art, and which is why performance art is my strongest voice when it comes to activism.
So Lerato, we're going to get to you in a second, but Carin, I actually just want to ask more about that, because I know that in 2015 it was your first performance art piece, yes, which is so beautiful, and I know that was quite a significant moment for you. So I'm curious to know, in terms of storytelling, you know, how you feel vulnerability takes its place to kind of fuel art and also activism at the same time.
I think any form of activism is already vulnerable, because as an activist, you take something that some people want to ignore it, some people want to ignore certain issues, other people fight for the issues, some people are perpetrators, a part of the issue. And as an activist, you go and you put yourself completely in the center of that, which makes you vulnerable. But also for me, with my performance art, taking vulnerability because my performance art is focused mainly on gender-based violence, and within that everyone is vulnerable. Every woman in that space is already vulnerable, and to do the performance art in a space where I put myself into more vulnerability, being either performing on my own, being in public spaces where I am open to anyone you know, approaching me. But that vulnerability then gives a voice and a strength to women who feel that they are in situations where they are vulnerable, but they don't know what to do, or they can't speak, or they fear for what to do and for their lives. it becomes this vulnerability becomes a voice of strength.
I love
So
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. There is so much strength in vulnerability, and it's amazing how you can harness that power to create change. So Lerato, let's get into your creative journey. Right now, as we stand, you are, like you said, a multi-award winning PR specialist. You also work in brand innovation and in the influencer space, and you're an activist. So how did you get to where you are today?
Oh gosh, I think, you know, your destiny is already preset before you even know it. And it's just a matter of, are you going to take the highway to get to it, or are you going to take the long, windy road? But either way, you can't run away from it, you know. I started out in advertising. From advertising, I went into PR, and somewhere in between all of that, I happened to be part of a reality show, a massive African reality show, right? And while on there, I was authentically myself, you know, because that's all that I know how to be. I just am. This is it. What you see is what you get. And when I left there, I didn't understand the gravity or the impact that I had had on so many African women, right? Because I represent the other, you know, the non-traditional African woman. I'm opinionated, I'm loud, I'm colorful, I am expressive, I'm everything that an African woman in the technical sense shouldn't be. And when I came out, so many people were like, you know, I'm so inspired to be myself and to be authentically me just by watching you do what you do, which is being you, you know? And that's sort of how I even, you know, started doing the best sort of work within PR, within marketing, is being reflective of authentic South African stories, authentically what we are, what we represent, what as women we are, what as South African people we are, and wanted to celebrate that, you know, before it was even trendy. So that's what I'm saying, like, my path has always led to fighting, to advocating for either being a proudly African woman or advocating for us to be represented appropriately in media and in publications, or just advocating for South African women and their rights and what we intrinsically deserve, you know. And that's sort of my path. And you know, it's had its ups and downs, it's had love and loss, it's had growth and all types of things, but I'm grateful every day that I went through all of that, because without knowing it, I changed so many lives. And that's a blessing.
Yeah, and you will continue to do so. I do think that authenticity is definitely the key to connection and to realizing real change, because like you said, you don't know how else to be. That just what you see is what you get type of thing. So thank you so much for sharing. Sarah, shall we get into your story? You've had quite a few twists and turns and pivots as well. But now, of course, you wear many hats rather. Do you want to talk about how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. I think similar to Lerato, I didn't necessarily plan to go into media and publishing or to become a curator, but all along the way I followed my gut. And I think that for me is quite an important thing, because if something's right or something's wrong, you just know it innately. And you know, whether something excites you or inspires you, you know that straight away. And I've kind of just used that as the thing that helps me like follow my path along the way. And so I started off, I come from Durban, I studied at UKZN, I studied media and publishing and English, also did philosophy, had no idea what I was going to do. And then I one day came across this magazine called One Small Seed, which is based in Cape Town, and I just thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Just full of like beautiful art and design and great writing. And I was just like, wow, this stuff doesn't exist anymore. Like, what happened to like this kind of publication and like, you know, this appreciation for the arts? And so me being me, I decided to write the editor a letter and tell him how awesome his magazine was. And then he offered me an internship. So that was the beginning of my journey. I packed my bags and moved to Cape Town. And sooner or later, I was the editor of that magazine. And then I moved from there to design in Durban. And I guess like as an editor, you're kind of a behind the scenes kind of person. You're more about creating a platform for other people's work and like seeking out amazing writers and amazing artists and creating a showcase and a platform for them. And I guess that's kind of me as well. Like I'm not so much about being in the limelight, but I'm about recognizing those people's voices that deserve to be in that position. And so when I started Anon, it was kind of based on that love of the arts that I've always had, but also this recognition that kind of felt like the art space that exists at the moment wasn't really that democratic and wasn't really that representative. It felt like you had to get a degree at Michaelis and tick all the right kind of boxes in terms of doing the right things in your career and being the right kind of person and having the right kind of publicity. And I don't think art's about that. I think it's much bigger than that. I think for me, art is really, it's about opening up a space for discussion. It's about having a whole representation of voices from young to old across genders. And so my first show that I had, I was ballsy enough to message Zanele Maholi on Instagram, and subsequently became my headliner. And a conversation with them taught me something. And I kind of wondered, like, why on earth would they bother to be on a show of someone at their debut exhibition? Like, I don't, you know, my CV basically includes me being an editor of a magazine, but I'm no one in the art world. And I realized it was about representation, and it was about making sure that that person and that demographic has a represented voice. And if they're not being represented, then there's a whole demographic that's not being heard. And I think, you know, it applies to gender, to race, to anyone that's marginalized. I think what I recognize is that throughout history, you know, that they say that history is written by the victors, and a lot of history is basically written by white men. That's why there are all these gaps of voices that haven't been heard throughout history, and it's women, and it's particularly Black women. So I think as we're seeing things changing now, it's about creating a platform for those voices and allowing people to speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like we can end this right here. We answered all the questions, man. I do want to actually rope that in, everything that Sarah was saying, in terms of representation, in terms of education more particularly, because I know that for many years within the industry that you've invested so much time, energy, money, effort into the next generation. You co-own Creative Art Solutions, which focused on children's educational theatre, which is really exciting. And, you know, given our education system, as Sarah was saying, it is biased and it does need a lot of rework. So what do you think the value and role of teaching children through the arts is?
For me, I think teaching and learning through art is probably one of the most important aspects of learning, not necessarily in a school setting, but in any setting of life. And even as adults, we should still learn through art, not just from ourselves and from other artists, but also from children. And one of the reasons I think I started with the whole thing of teaching children is because when you create art, and that art can be any form of art, performance art, it can be singing, it can be poetry, it can be dance, it can be fine art, anything where you can express, you create a voice for yourself, which you might not necessarily have if you stand up and you have to speak. So it's a different way in which a child can find themselves and express themselves, where being outside of the box is okay. Actually, being outside of the box is motivated. It's like, be outside of the box. Don't be what you think is normal and acceptable and what is cool and what is popular. Be you. Find yourself, whichever color you want to color in, whichever voice you want to use, whichever movement you want to make. Do that and learn who you are and learn where your position is within this world. And I think finding that space through art is one of the most important things, so that you don't go and try and find your space within blocks of acceptable things for society, where, you know, kids are not necessarily encouraged to become creatives. They're encouraged to be doctors and lawyers and business people, which is great because we need them, but don't discourage a child from experiencing all their creativity. Even if they become a doctor, they can still be some form of artist while being a doctor. I mean, doctors are artists in themselves. Yeah. I think everything has as a certain element of art, and children should be allowed to express that, to find themselves and to find their space.
Yeah, and we are multidimensional beings, so why not be an artist and a doctor at the same time? I'm really curious, Lerato, who you feel you fight for as an activist. I know that you've had many years of experience in many sorts of spaces, and you could write many books on your life story. So yeah, I really want to know who you feel you fight for or on behalf of.
You know, there's a quote by Maya Angelou, and she says, each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it and possibly without claiming it, she's standing up for all women, you know, and that's what it is. By fighting and standing up for what you believe in, you're fighting for so many others like you. Like Sarah said, I follow my gut feel. Your gut feel is the universe's signal to you. It's the universe's red flag, essentially, you know, and everything I've ever done has been from that gut feel. So I always look at, you know, I've faced like the worst of hardships because I am a woman and because I am a Black woman. I mean, on a very public, very public scale. And, you know, the easiest thing for me during that time would have been for me to say, you know what, let me just crawl into my corner and just try and deal with my grief and my loss and it's whatever. But I knew what was happening was wrong. I knew it was not the first time it's ever happened. I knew I was not going to be the last person it's happened to. So I had to pull up my big girl panties and say, you know what, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for your grandmother who it's happened to and many other widows before that. You're fighting for widows of now and you're fighting for widows of the future because this thing has to stop. At some point, regardless of what it is as women, when we say enough is enough, then it is enough. And we put all our energy and our fight and our fears behind that, you know, because that's how things are going to change. We're muted all the time. Every time we try and voice our displeasure or discomfort or unhappiness about something in society, either you're too loud, oh, she's an angry Black woman. There's all types of narratives except accepting that we have an issue that needs to be fixed, right? So as women now, we are the generation that says we won't be muted anymore. We'll use whatever we have access to change things, you know? And my thing is, I will use my influence for change and not just change. You know, it's not about money. It's not always about money because that money cannot save you from what society is doing to us as women as a whole. So the influence that I have, I will use it in every shape, form, and manner to change things because they have to change. You know, South Africa is so crazy right now because, you know, we've done everything. We've marched, we've protested, we've hashtags, we've worn Black, there's nothing we haven't done, but nothing has changed. So we're at a point now where we have to check our spheres of influence, no matter how big or how small within those spheres of influence. That's where change needs to come. And when you're fighting there for yourself, you're inadvertently fighting for so many women within your space and so many women that are still going to come within that space.
Naira Waheed also says, she's a poet, that all the women in me are tired, and I 100% feel that because I'm not even sure why it is our portion or our responsibility to be the ones advocating for when we are the victims and we are often the ones that get the short end of the stick. But I thank you all three for the work that you are doing in your different spheres because I think that little by little we will make impact and change. So I want to talk a little bit about change, and I want to address this question to both Lerato and Sarah because you work within an agency space or have worked within an agency or agency spaces in general. So let's talk a little bit about Women's Month and about the potentially superficial work that lots of brands do, because around this time of year, you know, many pop up, many come up with campaigns, many say they're going to do things, but I'm more interested in sustainable work and sustainable change. So I don't know how much you want to talk on this, both Sarah and Lerato, but I think you can both offer different perspectives, both working for an agency and owning an agency. But is there sustainable change within?
My answer is going to be very brief. I think as consumers, we're very tired of fashionable branding. Do you know what I'm saying? Now we want to buy into brands that are about change, that it's not just once a year on Women's Month where you're saying you're pro-woman, you're supporting women. We don't need that. You're not going to get our money. We want long-term change. We want to see changes even within your organization. How are you supporting women there? Is there like, even small things like sexual harassment clauses within your HR department? Is it there? Does it exist? So don't come once a year and tell me, you know, we love you women, here's a rose. I don't care for your roses. Do you know what I'm saying? We want change, because that's what we buy into now. We don't just buy into products, we buy into the values of the company. Because I mean, we've done it every other way and it hasn't worked. My coins that I work so hard for are not going to go into the pockets of a brand that 11 months of the year, there's a misogyny issue. And then that 1 month, once a year, you're going to send me some emailer or a little cute little gift and I'm supposed to come back and spend money with you. No, we want change. And what the thing is, social media has given us access to all those things. They've given us almost a direct line to the brands to ask them, okay, thank you, happy Women's Month. So what are you guys doing for the women in your organization? Do you buy them pepper sprays because you know they have to take taxis in the middle of the night to get home from working at your call centers? Do you do that? No. Okay, so what do you do for the women in your organization? And if the answer is nothing, then skip Women's Month and keep it moving like you do the rest of the 11 months.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of lip service out there, and I mean, quite particularly recently after the Black Lives Matter movement, Microsoft was actually like taken to task for going out there and commissioning Black artists to do work for their campaign. And there's an article in the New York Times that's like, well, you're actually making us feel used because you're hiring Black artists to make yourself look good, but what are you doing? What are you changing in your policy, in your company? What is your hiring policy? Like, are you making any changes there? Probably not. You know, there's also a conversation we were having about, you know, why do we always say women run business or female entrepreneur or woman president? It's like, you have to refer to the woman when it's a woman, but you don't say, oh, I'm going to go see my male doctor. Like obviously, you know.
Standard, yeah.
And yeah, I actually came across an art book that was just put out by Fiden called Great Women Artists, but they've crossed out the word woman on the front because actually they were great artists who should have been put into the history books many years ago, and they were prolific at the time, but they were ignored. They were exhibiting on shows, they just weren't put into the art books. And like, why was that? Yeah.
Yes, Lerato?
I think it's because as women we're viewed as the others. I mean, within our government, there's a department of women, youth, and disabled people. That's how we're grouped. You understand? Exactly. That's how we're grouped, and that's how we're viewed. And I don't understand why, when women are such contributors to the economy, to society, to households, to everything, but we are viewed as lesser than, weaker than. I mean, that grouping alone just tells you what they think of us, even in this country. It's ridiculous.
And I actually think we're 51% of the population. So there are more women.
9% of the economy, of the buying power, if not more, actually. No. But we are the others. And it's time.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not.
Yeah. So it's this thing of, they're like, oh no, we're going to give you equal rights as well now, and we're going to make sure that everyone knows about you. It's like, no, just pointing it in that way, just making it a thing about, we will let everyone, it's now a female, you're already showing that we're not on that same level according to you. We've got to have that special little bracket because you are the main, you are the men, that's the acceptable, that's the norm. But then we'll give a platform to the women where there shouldn't be that platform is given. It should just be a given that we are all there equal, whether you are whatever you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, they should give us women's parking at the mall right by the door if they're going to give things to women. That's what
I will sign for that. Please put that petition up. I'm here for that. I actually want to talk about equity because I don't know about you, but I don't believe in equality. I think just because our oppression is systematic in our lifetime and the next couple generations, equality is not going to happen. So equity is a conversation that I think is a really good one to have. I'm really curious how you feel that can come about, where the standard will shift, where you know, we don't have to ask for permission to, like Carin was saying, be added onto a panel or be qualified by saying female DJ and have us be praised for that. So what is it going to take for things to change? Let's start with Sarah.
Yeah, I think for me it starts with us. You know, it starts at home and it starts in our businesses. It starts with how we run our businesses, who we hire. Something I was thinking about, like there's this meme at the moment going around about how women-led nations are doing better with COVID than the male-led nations. So New Zealand, Germany, Taiwan, Finland are all amongst the nations that are dealing with the best. And what comes out of that is it's about a new leadership style. And it's something I've thought about actually writing a blog about for a while, but I haven't come to it. And it's what does it look like to run a business from feminine principles as opposed to masculine principles? And what are those principles? For me, it's empathy, it's trust, it's collaboration, it's partnership, it's supporting each other, as opposed to the way we were raised as little girls, which is competition. I must be better than you, you know, competing against the other rather than trying to uplift and support each other. It also comes with this profit and bottom line being above everything else. So fuck the environment, as long as the company's making some money, we'll be okay. It's like domination and success over rather than success with. And so I think it's about recognizing the value of these kind of feminine values, which are also inherent in men, but they've been smothered in all of us. You know, like I've got a boyfriend that went to one of these like hectic boarding schools where all of those kind of values were smashed out of them. They, you know, they're bullied, they're beaten up, they're taught that like competition is the be all and end all. And I realized it took me like to reach my 30s to realize that I actually felt the same way, and that those values had been drilled into me from a child rather than honesty and trust and caring for the other person. It was like, how can I be better? And like, that's not the way to go about living your life. You know, so as I say, like it starts at home. It starts with who you hire, who you hire in your company, how you hire. Like I make a point of offering an internship every year, and generally that has been to a woman. I guess it's just my own kind of thing there, but not necessarily. It's also about how we speak. I think language is super important. You know, so many of these discussions we've had have come down to how we use language. You know, for example, like speaking of the woman was raped versus he raped the woman. It's like the first one, she did it to herself, as opposed to like he did it actively. And it's like taking that passive language away and shifting it to the active and bringing back culpability. I mean, just yesterday I saw a news headline on Prince Albert forced someone to have sex with him. Like, no, he raped her.
He raped her. There's no forced sex. It's sex, consensual sex or rape.
Yeah, was it not rape because he was polite? Like, no.
He asked nicely, can I rape you? Do you mind? Can I force you?
He's a nice white man. Like, no. And I think it's about how we speak about other women, and it's about how we speak to our men that we have relationships with, and getting everyone on the same page. I think it's really that it starts with conversation, and then we build upon that.
Let's go to Carin and then Lerato afterwards.
So I mean, I'm with Sarah on this one, as you said, starting at home, but also coming back to your question to me earlier with the children. It's starting with teaching young girls and boys that doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, one is not better than the other. As a girl, you can be the strongest and the smartest, you can be the president without the boy next to you being less. And the boy should also learn that this girl can be better than me at something, and that doesn't make me less of a man, because there is that thing where it's the boys don't cry and girls get the pink, soft, fluffy shit to play with, and the boys get the scientifical and mechanical toys to play with, because according to the patriarchal society, it's, you know, the boy is going to be the man who's going to be the head of the household, and the woman is going to be there to be the mother and to be caring and just to look after the household. And that shift needs to happen very fast, because even though there's a lot of us who fight for that, there's still like a big chunk of people who teach kids that there's a certain role that you have when you're a boy and when you're a girl. And that gender role needs to be eroded. It needs to be taken away, and it should just be, you can go and be who and whatever you want to be without that affecting the opposite sex negatively.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be that thing of the boy is this and the girl is that. The same thing as there's also a thing where women very often want to go, yeah, but the man should have done that. That should also stop among women. Don't go and say the man should have done that. Because as women, we get upset if men say, oh, yeah, but you're a woman, so you should do this, or you should look like this, or you should behave like this. And if we don't want men to do that, then as women, we also need to check ourselves. Yeah. And don't then, from your side, apply these certain gender roles, because you are not helping anyone. Because also, again, other people see that and they're like, well, if she says it like that, then it's okay for him to say it like that, because again, they go back to these specific gender roles. And it's also with the thing that Sarah's talking about, the rape, is using language where certain things are not called out for what it is and excused in a certain way. I think a big thing that's happening right now is also grown men making jokes about 13-year-olds and going, oh yeah, but it was just a joke, I'm not a pedophile. No, sorry, if you make a sexual joke, which is not funny because rape is not a joke, about a 13-year-old, you're a pedophile. And you showing behavior that falls into that category, and then your mother and your wife can't come and say, oh no, but he was just making a joke, because it's not a joke, it's not funny. It is rape. And if it's not consensual, if it's not, hi, I want to have sex with you, can we have sex now? Yes, great, thank you, then it's rape.
Yeah.
If it's not asked for, if it's not consented, there's no way of accidentally fell into her, nicely pushed her into her.
Yeah, I definitely echo that and 100% agree. And I think we all are carriers of patriarchy, so we do need to check ourselves, like you're saying. But definitely the responsibility, for the most part, should be placed on men, because they are who patriarchy serves, and they need to also make the change. So Lerato, we're definitely going to come to you about this conversation. You want to go for it?
Sorry, I was just saying, like, we have to be unapologetically supportive of each other. You know, like Sarah was saying, we've been pitted against each other for so long, and we also don't know why. Why don't girls like other girls? Why are we fighting? Do you know what I'm saying? And that's all because of men. They did this, right? So I will unapologetically, intentionally hire a woman for what I'm trying to do first. If there is no woman that is able to be a service provider for what I need, then I'll look to men. And I think that's the mentality we kind of need to have, because that's what men do. That's how they got so far ahead, is being in this weird little boys club, you know, of giving each other business, supporting each other. We need to do that. We can't be, I'm not ashamed to say, I'm looking for a female producer or whatever, because that's what I want. I want to support other women. If a woman won't give it to me, then I will go and search for a male to sort of supply what is needed. But we need to be intentional, not just in our words, but in our actions and in where we put our money. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts. Supporting each other emotionally, mentally, and financially. Because that's one of the biggest forms of abuse, financial abuse.
Yeah, there was, sorry, if I can just say, there was actually a whole conversation that happened on Facebook a while back where a woman went and she said, I'm looking for a Black female, and the position she was looking for. And there was this white guy going, oh, but in this country, you can't specify that you want a Black female for this position. It must be open. And someone just plain and simple answered him and go, oh, wait, she just did.
Now what?
Yeah. Now
she just did. Exactly. Don't come with you. She can't. She just did. That is what she asked for, and she just did. And everyone else was like, "Yeah, thank you." Because what is he going to say? What is he going to say? Because she just did.
Exactly. End of the conversation. I think that when we have these conversations, we do need to remember that if, for example, you identify as a feminist or you advocate for that and for women's equity, that it is intersectional. So that is a really important point to make, especially considering how far back, you know, Black women and queer Black women more specifically have been held in this country. So here's a question. you are all, oh, Sarah, yeah, go for it before we.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing I was thinking just to round off that point. And I think there's also a really important space for both role models and mentors in that space, like to find them for yourself, to find women that can be role models to you and mentor you in that space. So like I've got a life coach who's also a yoga instructor, who's someone that has really helped me to be my like full self. And I'm also part of a business group of women entrepreneurs, and we meet once a month. And I think of the group, I'm the second youngest, so they've mostly all been around the block a few more times than me. And having that kind of support structure has been so powerful, you know, in being able to do what I do on a daily basis, and to get feedback on problems that you have and people that have come from a similar position. But I think to have those female role models and mentors in your life are really important.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, because like I just recently lost my mentor, Zinzi Mandela, right? And I could literally turn to her with any, and that's why I think I have so much fight in me, because she was always there, like, you're not a lioness, you're a lion. You better roar, you better go, you better, you know, be heard. And I think had I not had that kind of relationship, or someone who is experienced in sort of, who gets me, who's been where I'm trying to go, who's done what I've done, I probably would have been a little, maybe a bit shyer, or I don't know. But because of that kind of relationship and the drive and the fire that she put like in my furnace, so to speak, that's why I know I can, there is nothing, when I tell you there is absolutely nothing I cannot do if I put my mind to it, I know that for sure. And every young female in this country needs to find a mentor, someone who can dedicate their wisdom, because it's the wisdom, money aside of it, it's the wisdom that is important.
And that speaks to access as well, you know, access to knowledge, which is access to so much more beyond that. And I think that often there's the scarce mentality, especially because if you walk into a boardroom, you're one of two people there who is a woman. And all you want to do is hold on to that position and not necessarily open the door for the next person. But I feel the responsibility to do that, just given our position in society. I think the more we open up, the more we share, the more we get together, the more we completely downtrod competition as the standard, the further we go, and much faster as well, at a much faster pace. So you are all creatives, and I want to ask the question to all of you about being an agent of change in society, because I do think that with the work that you do, you can change the mentality of many people, and you can actually make a difference. It might feel very slow, but slowly but surely, with all of our contribution, it does eventually make an impact. So do you think that creatives are agents of change?
100%, yeah. I don't know. I don't know whether it's our temperaments or our needs to express ourselves emotionally through the arts, which is often a more effective form of expression than like science, for example. But I really think we do that. You know, when I had my launch exhibition the beginning of last year, it was an exhibition of 40 female artists, and it kind of felt like I was tapping into the collective consciousness, which I felt like what I was doing was creating a space for something that everyone was already thinking. I was just the first one to kind of do it in that format. And since then, there have been so many other follow-up kind of exhibitions like that, and platforms for female creatives. And I think sometimes it's just like we're all waiting for someone else to do something or say something, but to be that person and just don't be apologetic about it, and don't wait for permission, just go and do it. To, you know, I was going to say it takes a bit of balls, but we need a bit of better expression than that, right?
Yeah,
it takes a bit of vagina to do that. It takes a bit of vagina.
I think, you know, the creative have always, or the creatives as a whole, we've always played a very important role in change. I mean, just in South Africa, musicians and artists played some of the biggest roles in getting us to a democratic sort of state, you know, just getting the message of what was happening here to the world, which we inevitably led to our freedom. So that's why artists need to be protected at all costs, because they are the dipstick of the time. They are the reflection of the time. So if 5 years, 20, 50 years from now, people want to know what was happening around this time, art will tell you that, the music will tell you. you know? And that's why I find it so sad that our government is not taking care of our creatives during this very terrible time. It breaks my heart, but they know the power of those creators when it's time for elections, etc. So, I mean, I really do feel artists should be protected at all costs, and creatives always.
Yeah, for me, I almost, I usually, when I try to explain how I see the position of an artist and creatives within activism or any other kind of movement that's happening, is we are, I almost want to say it's the face, it's the voice. Because if something has happened, you remember that song that was sung. When someone does a big speech, the part of it you remember is those few lines from a poem.
Yeah.
If you look at a march that happened, what are the things we remember? Those placards that stood out, that you remember the image. So art stimulates our senses. It stimulates what we see, what we hear, and that in turn stimulates the feeling. And when you stimulated a feeling in someone, it creates a memory, and it creates, I almost want to say, an energy for them to want to add to that. So that's why I think it's very important to have creatives and to have artists be that face and be that voice when it comes to creating change and having a movement and being an activist. Because I mean, you need the lawyers in the background who's drafting and contracting and signing, and the doctors who will tell you what is needed. But the everyday person is not going to remember that draft that was pulled up. They're not going to remember all the technical and the legal sentencing that were used. They remember an image. They remember a song. They remember a sentence from a poem. That thing, like I said, that thing that creates the emotion. And that's why it's always important to have the artist there. But unfortunately, it is happening where the artists are going and being looked at as the least important job at the moment, is that of an artist, apparently, according to some research and some things that's been done. And I'm just like, how? Because what's going to be remembered from the COVID pandemic and the lockdown is also, it's creative people who did shit that everyone looked at and go, how are you going to ever forget the song about the Zor? I mean, no one's going to forget that ever.
Yeah.
And that was an artist who did that.
Yeah, definitely. I do think, like Lerato was saying, that it is really disappointing that the powers that be and our government, I mean, we need to hold them accountable, because in this time, I don't know about you, but music has carried me through, you know, even watching Netflix, any sort of entertainment has been the escape that all of us have needed to get through this collective trauma. So it is really disappointing that there hasn't been a faster response, and also a response with money to help out our fellow artists as well. I do think one thing that's powerful when it does come to art is the power of reimagination or imagination, and how artists have vision and can kind of imagine a world outside of what we're facing today. So for me, sometimes I can't even see past 2 days from now. But when it comes to art, there is this space to explore what the world could possibly be. So I just want to play in that space a little bit and ask you what you think, or where you think the world should be headed, and what you think an ideal space would be where especially women can have power and flourish. Lerato, let's start with you.
You know, I'm forever optimistic, you know, because I think what you put out it manifests into a real thing. I mean, for me, in terms of just being a woman in South Africa, I pray that, or I'm hoping for and trying to manifest that, you know, this perpetual state of anxiety that we're living in as women, you know, where you wake up and you're like, oh, yay, my husband didn't kill me. I'm not a femicide statistic. You can jog without having to, you know, look around that someone's going to throw into your car. You can go to the mall without being worried about being kidnapped. You can go to work without having to worry about being sexually harassed. You can go to church without, chances of your pastor doing. Do you understand? We live in this never-ending never-ending state of anxiety. And then we're still expected to be functioning members of society and good spouses and great mothers and great contributors to our careers and. But how? When we're not safe, when we are always scared, when we live in a country where rhinos are more protected than we are. Do you understand? I just want accountability. I just want accountability across the board. Firstly, there needs to be accountability from the person who's leading this country. Because I believe the reason why everything is just so bad for women in this country is because there's no consequences to all these actions that are done to us as women. They really aren't. You know, you can be a rapist and still 2 days later, you're walking right past your victim's house.
500 rand bail.
There's consequences. So I just want to just, I love South Africa so much. I love the people here so much. I love the women. The women here are the most beautiful from all over the world. But we're not safe, and we can't live like this. We can't live waiting to be acted, because that's what's happening, and it's not fair. And that's what I'm hoping for, like just real change from, you know, and it has so many layers, because it has to change from a traditional level where traditions are just shields for patriarchal bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It has to change from a religious perspective, because that's where a lot of the foundation of who they become. It needs to change from a media perspective, because that's how, you know, victims are not protected. The words used when talking about all these heinous crimes still bring it back to us, although we're not doing it to ourselves. You know, entertainment and art, artists, musicians also need to start being very responsible with their messages and how they portray women, because a lot of kids are watching that and thinking that it's okay. So all these changes need to happen. They need to happen for us to even be able to feel even remotely safe again. One thing I have to say, the one thing I pray for is a public sex offenders list. That's what I pray for, so that I can know that the guy I'm dating is a rapist, the person I'm hiring has some sort of sexual misconduct, whatever. We deserve to know what we're getting ourselves into and the men that are around us, so that we can also protect ourselves and not be caught, you know, blindsided. That's the least we deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like people have access to your credit history, and an estate agent can go, oh, you've got bad debt with Telkom because you didn't pay that one bill, but you could meet a guy on Tinder who's a rapist.
Exactly.
And no one cares.
It's not even part of any HR policies in this country where before you hire anyone, you check that. Do you understand? So we are all literally sleeping and working with rapists, potential rapists.
No, definitely.
And we deserve to know, especially given the numbers in this country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, and also if you look at all the promises that was made and the no bail and no parole, and now some of the laws have now changed, and then they read stricter bail conditions, and I think to myself, I'm not so sure where no bail and stricter bail conditions is the same thing. I don't know. It's so I mean, and so to come back to your actual question, where you're saying like, where can we find spaces? I want a space where it's everywhere. Like Lerato said, I want to walk to the shop. I want to go for a jog. I want to go for a swim on my own. I want to not go outside and go, okay, what is the time now? Is it going to be dark when I get back? Do I need to find a different way to get back? Will I be able to walk? What do I have with me? Okay, do I have shoes on that I can run in if I need to start running? I don't want that. And I don't want there to just be specific spaces. I want it to be everywhere. I want to not look at statistics and go, okay, cool. So statistically right now, 5 rapes are reported every hour, where only 1 in every 9 rapes or something like that it actually gets reported, and almost 7.5 women are killed every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, it's beyond ridiculous that we actually are functioning as well as we are as women in South Africa, living in a country where the chance of being killed is so incredibly high. And that is not even looking at the rape, financial abuse, sexual abuse, systematic abuse, just being paid less. I mean, some of a lot of these problems are worldwide, but in South Africa, we have a serious problem.
Yeah.
Yet here we are, women, and we are doing a lot of shit, and we are doing it so well under these circumstances.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you imagine where we could have been and where we can be if we didn't have to try and navigate through all of that to just do the basic things that we want to do every day?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to say, so I had an exhibition last year in October that ended up running for 5 months, and it was around gender-based violence, and it was artists that are creating work around that. That's how I met Carin. And also, like, as Carin was saying, that imagery that came out of the protests around Uyinen's death, like the placards and the photographs. And I wanted to bring this all into a space to kind of recreate that emotion that we'd all felt over that time in September. And, you know, there was a point in my life where every Instagram post I put out there was like hashtag gender-based violence, hashtag GBV. Like, it was like all I was kind of immersed in. And then after old Cyril made his speech recently about gender-based violence, and I'm on a WhatsApp group with some friends, and one of the guys was like, oh, GBV, it's got a name now. And I'm like, where the fuck have you been? Like, how is this the first time you've heard this term? And it made me angry, and it made me also realize that, like, sometimes we're working in such a little bubble that we don't realize that 99% of the population is completely oblivious to this stuff that to us is like the whole universe, right? And so I was thinking, how do we take it further? How do we take it out of an art gallery? You know, so being in 2 gallery spaces and having a radio interview, like, that's the sort of extent of the publicity that it got. Maybe it's 2,000 people, maybe it's 10,000 people, but there's still millions of people in this country that don't have a clue about this conversation. And I'm kind of asking myself, like, why isn't there more of a platform for public art in this country? You know, I mean, many European countries, there's public art wherever you go, there's street art, there's money that goes into this. You know, I go for a run along the promenade, and there's 2 kind of like quite sweet murals about like ocean cleanliness and whatnot, but there's nothing that's really serious and really, as you said, the rhinos, there's a rhino sculpture, but there's nothing about these problems that are really so much bigger and so much more important. Where's that funding? Where, like, why isn't there like a person who's designated as the curator of public art space in the city and in the country? Because I think, as Carin and Lerato, you've both been saying, like, the power of art to communicate and to challenge people and to open up conversations that other forms of communication don't really get to that level. I don't know what that platform is. Like, I don't write policy, but there needs to be more of it.
No, definitely. I mean,
because I do think that policy is where the change actually happens, and that we're tired of speaking, and we're also tired of taking to the streets to fight. It should be a collective effort, you know, and what Lerato was saying, that and even, I mean, I guess all of you, I'm going to echo you in terms of our language, the media, the arts, tradition, religion, education. So many things need to be addressed, changed intentionally, and really work to serve the women of this country, because the statistics are scary, and it's a miracle that the 4 of us are sitting here together having this conversation. And I do hope that if you are tuned in right now, that you will take this offline as well and take this into your life and continue having these conversations. Unfortunately, ladies, we have run out of time, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Carin, Lerato, and Sarah, for being here. It's been a phenomenal conversation, and I hope that we can even continue having this chat offline as well. So thank you. I'm going to say Happy Women's Day to you, because you did incredible work to truly make an impact and change with your platforms.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. I think, you know, we scratched the surface. It's such a huge topic, and we could carry on for hours. So if you ever want to follow up.
They're definitely going to be things and 5. So do make sure that you watch their socials, check their websites, get your tickets, and let's continue talking and advocating for change.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Do we leave? Do we wait? Do we leave? What happens now?
I think you can leave. I just left. You can hear me, but you can't see me.
Oh, okay. Bye.
Bye.